slide, please. Now this slide will look familiar to Australians because I know you've been going through very serious droughts. Indeed, water shortages are a critical problem around the world. In every continent of the world, we're pumping out the underground aquifers at twice the rate of replacement by rainwater or more. So we have water tables sinking around the world. We're using those fossil water supplies for irrigation to keep the green revolution going that is allowing us to feed the growing populations of places like India. But eventually, because we're taking the money out of the bank, so to speak, we will find it impossible to get to freshwater supplies economically at some point in the future. And that may cause very dramatic and sudden changes in the ability of various countries to produce crops to feed their populations. And this could lead, along with climate change, to dramatic movements of people across international borders, leading to all kinds of political unrest. There's a good deal of media coverage right now of the fact that climate change is expected to lead to large migrations of people over the next 30 years, and this may lead to a lot of problems politically and militarily around the world. Next slide, please. Now, climate, of course, has become a very important topic, and I know it's a topic of this conference. John Gulabad, who spoke to you earlier, gave me this data, that saving a gigaton of carbon by reducing our 2050 population by 1 billion people through both education and family planning information and services would be 1/1000th the cost of any other technical options that we have available to us. So indeed, making a decision not to have that extra child is the most cost-effective intervention against continuing aggravated climate change that we have available to us. Next slide. Now, one of the things I've pointed out in this introductory part of this talk is that we're dealing with individual behaviors that are driven by cultural and informational issues more than barriers to medical services. And therefore, reaching people with the information and motivation they need requires use of the mass media. In many countries, radio is still the dominant medium. This is particularly true in sub-Saharan Africa, where Population Media Center is working extensively. Next slide, please. The organization is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization. You're welcome to visit our website, which is populationmedia.org. By the way, on that website, you can sign up to be on one of two mailing lists, either to get a monthly e-newsletter or to get my daily population emails, which contain articles or editorials about population and global sustainability issues. The issues that we address are listed here, and as I mentioned, we're primarily working through broadcast media and particularly heavily in radio. Next slide. Here you'll see the countries where we have been working and the strategies that we use. We're using a combination of media and channels of communication and formats of communication to reach people, but we are particularly focused on the use of long-running serialized dramas to create characters in a local cultural context. These are all locally written and produced in local languages. And these characters gradually evolve into role models for the audience, and by doing so, demonstrate the benefits of their new behaviors and motivate people to emulate their behaviors. Next slide, please. This is a picture of Miguel Sabido, the creator of the methodology we use. He was vice president of the big Mexican network Televisa, during the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and into 1998 when he retired, the same year I founded Population Media Center. I had spent quite a bit of time prior to that working with him and also carrying out studies of the effects of the social content telenovelas that he created and the radio novellas that came about as a result of trainings he did in various countries around the world, as well as television novels in places like India and China. So I had seen some of the effects of some of these programs. Sabito created this methodology basically using the Latin American telenovela format, but creating, in addition to the positive and negative characters that populate all melodrama, creating a third type of character to represent segments of the audience. Next slide, please. These third types of characters are the transitional characters, and they start out right in the middle of the road culturally, and they, as I mentioned, they gradually evolve into positive role models for the audience. And they can, because they can form very strong bonds with audience members who have these people coming into their living rooms for months and years, these characters can have more influence than the Minister of Health in terms of behavior of the audience as a result of what the characters do. The negative characters, as we all know from dramas that we've watched or listened to, are the reason people love to pay attention to these programs, because they create the drama, and they are the people we love to hate. And the positive characters are there also as models for the transitional characters. They may be a little too good to really be believed, but they hold out the most positive model of behavior that can be found in that cultural context. Next slide, please. These programs are long-running. That is one of the hallmarks of our strategy, and the reason for that is it takes time to build an audience and to get the audience to form real emotional bonds with characters. The high entertainment value is what grabs the audience and keeps them coming back, with lots of cliffhangers, suspense at the end of each episode, so that the audience always comes back to find out what the resolution of that cliffhanger was, but they always end every episode with yet another cliffhanger, and they need to come back again. In fact, it's funny, we've gotten a lot of letters from audience members in countries where we've done serial dramas where they've never had a serialized drama before, writing in saying, when is this going to come to an end? We're busy and we don't have time to listen to this every night. Well, guess what? It may take 2.5 or 3 years before it comes to an end, and then we start another program. And so we find we get huge audiences. In fact, you'll see, starting with a couple slides down, next slide, please. Anyway, you'll see we get some of the largest audiences of any programs on the air. This slide basically gives you some of the theories on which this strategy is based. It uses the social cognitive theory of Albert Bandura as a primary basis. His studies over the last 54 years at Stanford University have looked at the psychology of role models, from parents to peers to fictional characters, and how they influence people emotionally and intellectually to adopt new behaviors, to believe that they have the ability and the right to plan their families, to send their daughters to school, and various other innovations that we promote. And these other theories are explained in great depth in a publication that is available as a free download on our website, and you'll see that in the next slide.